Frederick Mieville, the adventurous young Englishman with a proud Swiss heritage who pioneered sheep farming in the Matoda district.
Sending your younger sons out to the colonies to make them men was a well-established custom among well-to-do families in 19th century England. Otago's pioneers included a number of such youthful colonial cadets. Frederick Louis Mieville, for example, was from an ancient Swiss family that had been resident in England for a couple of generations when he was born here in Camberwell, London in 1830. Links with Switzerland were maintained, however, and Frederick, as he by then preferred to be called, finished his education in Geneva. He was then supposed to go into the military, but preferred instead to have an adventure in New Zealand.
He sailed with the early Canterbury settlers to Littleton on the Dominion in 1851 and carried on with the ship to disembark at Dunedin.
Mieville spent his first years in New Zealand working as a cadet on Susted's sheep run here at Goodwood, just north of Waikouaiti, one of the earliest established in the province, where he learnt the ropes of pastoral farming before heading off southwards to find land of his own. With Maori help, he investigated the Matoda River catchment and had the first pick of all the land there for his sheep run, which he called Glenham. He then got some old whalers to help him put together a two-room fern tree cottage with a fantastic view out over the countryside in front. This model of the house survives here in the Wyndham Museum, and you can see it was a snug little oblong structure about 3.5 metres by 7 metres and with a fireplace big enough to walk into. Had a dirt floor and made from local materials, of course, except for the windows, which were shipped down from Dunedin.
Once he'd finished the house in March 1854, Frederick wrote in his memoir, "Well, now I had nothing to do but to go to town, Dunedin, and get married." He'd travelled out to New Zealand with the Richardson family, another well-connected English family trying out their colonial aspirations in Otago. In 1854, he married his former shipmate, Fanny Richardson, and took his new bride south to Glenham.
So rough was the countryside and so foul the weather that this 200-kilometre honeymoon journey took them 4 weeks on horseback. They were storm-stayed by flooded rivers for 2 weeks at a rough shepherd's cottage, and then again for a few days at Chief Reko's whare here at Tuturo. In Southland, the young couple faced all the trials of backcountry pioneers, enduring the isolation and supply difficulties of their remote location. This must have been particularly challenging for young people of their class, their English family background surely giving them expectations of a more comfortable lifestyle. One consolation for Fanny was that her father, Dr. Frederick Richardson, leased the adjoining run, and her brother, who managed it for him, became their nearest neighbour. Over the next few years, Frederick Mieville pioneered sheep farming in the Matoda district and gradually built up Glenham into a profitable enterprise.
In 1857, the Mievilles sold up their sheep farming interests and briefly returned to England. A year later they came back to Otago, however, and Frederick established himself as a merchant in Dunedin, where they lived until 1868.
They then returned permanently to England, where Frederick followed in his father's footsteps by becoming a member of the London Stock Exchange. They lived here in fashionable Hampstead with their large family, 7 sons and 4 daughters, and they're buried here in the local parish churchyard. It seems a long way from that 2-room cottage in the back blocks of Matoda. A number of names he bestowed in this period are still part of the landscape here. Wyndham, for example, was the name of a British general winning renown in the Crimean War that was raging at the time, General Charles Wyndham. His name was actually spelt with an I rather than a Y. General Wyndham was known as the Hero of Redan after a Russian fortress that he conquered in 1855, and Mieville added that name to a nearby stream as well. Glenham with an N also seems to be a misspelling for Glenham with an M in Suffolk. Frederick's younger sister, Fanny Mieville, had married the vicar and moved into the rectory there in 1853, just as he took up his Southland run. Their parents also later retired there. During his later years in London, Frederick devoted his leisure time to scholarly pursuits. He's also something of an artist and raconteur. In 1910, he wrote a wonderful memoir about his early years in Otago and Southland. It's full of colour and detail. He also corresponded with historian Harry Beattie and proved a valuable source of information for the latter's research on pioneer Southland. The picture on display here is a self-portrait painted when he was 65 in 1895. Frederick Mieville died in England in 1922, aged 92.